A cold, quiet, rosy morning. Very many trees, so very tall, lanky and barren. Humidity biting at the nose, the cheeks with the heat of chill. Men sit huddled by a cold fire. It's too damp still. The man with the rifle slung over his shoulder stares into the embers with a weighty breath he exhales. You're a real dope. The man with an orange vest looks at his watch. Dawn will break real soon. Just be patient, Jason. The last man huddled over the embers, clinging to its warmth, looks up at Robert, the man in the vest, with contempt and hatred. The orange heat of the sun comes through the branches and the trees, licking their faces and bodies through their layers and layers of slightly wet clothes. Donald, the man with the rifle, stands up, away from the fire, looks at the sun, then follows it. Jason and Robert follow him wordlessly as Robert trips over himself, choking the last of the fire out. Donald walks through the dense bush, with each shove of an elbow snapping a branch. The two men behind him following the path he cleared for them. Donald reaches the top of the hill and looks at the horizon, then sits on the wet grass with the rifle sticking up into the air. Robert runs up the hill, trying to avoid the wet grass. Donald looks at him, at the bottom of the hill, from under the collar, eyes red with hatred. You know what you've done to us, right? Robert averts his gaze, locking eyes with the ground. Donald, what is it? Jason watches on, holding his arm breathlessly. Donald lets the rifle fall to his side. We're screwed. Jason slugs his way up, no longer cold, and looks around. Can't see a goddamn thing! Jason and Donald now walk together, while Robert keeps his distance in their trail. His stupid little bugger presence makes me want to beat him to death. Donald walks, with the rifle sitting heavy on his shoulder. I'd gladly do it too. But, Tilda's heart would break to see me do that to her little brother. Jason looks over his shoulder. He got eaten by a bear, or mountain lion, or something. Donald looks at him distastefully and continues walking, with Jason slowing down, his face turning red. Robert inches closer to the two other men. I know it'd be pointless to try. Jason explodes on him. Try and what? He points at him, shoving his finger into his face. You put us right where we are, you absolute ass! He grabs onto his face with each hand and grinds his head up against the bark of a tree. Robert tries to push him away as Jason goes to grab his vest and starts to slap Robert violently. Please stop! As Jason goes to wind up his arm again, Donald grabs his wrist and locks eyes with him. I'll hurt you worse if you don't stop already. Robert falls to the ground, sobbing, then scrambles up to his feet with a bloody nose now spewing. Jason breathes heavily with bloodlust in his eyes as he continues to look at Robert. Robert holds his nose with blood running between his fingers, his eyes beginning to swell, pulls out a knife. Donald throws Jason against a tree with a trip, falling, then hitting his head on a rock. Jason lays there for a moment as Robert cries. Donald looks assuredly at Robert. You're fine. Please put it away. He's a goddamn fool. Look, you're fine. You and me, we'll walk together. The fool will follow. Robert sobs. But I can't. He falls onto his knees, pointing the knife at Robert. Donald inches forward. Yes, you can. Look, it'll be okay. I'm not even that mad at you. That's the God-honest truth. Robert shoves his face under his elbow and hides, still pointing. Donald walks around the blade. You know who I'm angry with? Robert weeps and sucks in air. Who? Donald lightly tugs the blade out of his grip, gets down on one knee, and places his hand on his shoulder. Myself, kid. I knew better. Jason's head tilts up slightly with one eye open and dirt on his face. He's also a fool. Donald and Robert walk together as Jason walks behind them angry, flustered, and heavily bandaged. The rushing waters of a river can be heard in the distance as they walk. Donald notices and stops the two. That's east. Robert looks at Donald excitedly with swollen eyes, then follows like a lost pup. Jason frowns and follows, mumbling to himself. The violent tearing of white water rips into jagged rock just below the surface of the water. We can follow the river downstream. I don't know what river this is, but if we follow it, eventually we'll end up near civilization. Jason looks at the two men in front of him, who are standing by the edge. What makes you so sure? Donald looks over his shoulder. I'm not sure, but this is better than nothing. We can keep walking into nothing, or we could use this. Jason rubs his bandaged head and sighs. We need some indication of where we're going. It could be 50 miles before we see even a road. Donald turns his body slightly over to Jason. What exactly do you think we should do then? I think we need high ground. The plan we had before, sunrise, catching our bearings, that sort of thing. Donald frowns slightly. We knew before coming here that the terrain would be a bitch to navigate. Hardly enough change in the topography to let us know where we are. Jason looks at Robert. I know what I did was wrong, but what you did was wrong too. But I know if we can get a good visual, you might just be able to redeem yourself, kid. Donald looks at Jason, then to Robert, slightly amused. Let's hear him out for a sec here. Robert nods hesitantly. Okay then. Jason points up at a tree just behind him, which stood slightly clear of the others, ever so slightly taller. Climb up and see what you can see. You're native to the area. You said it well enough. Robert looks to the tree, which seems to have a glow of hope about it. Donald squints and frowns in disapproval. What a stupid-ass backward idea. Look, we're here because he doesn't know his way around. What exactly would that accomplish? Jason puts his hands up in surrender. I'm just throwing ideas out here. All I know is that I'm hungry, I'm tired, I'm thirsty, and I want to go home. Donald nods in disapproval. Your stupidity is well fed. Robert tugs on Donald's sleeve. I can do it. And I know you're right, but I can make all of this end the right way. I don't know exactly where we are, but if I can get us moving in the right direction, upstream or down, then shouldn't I at least try? His eyes look to Donald's for approval. Donald looks away and at the tree for a moment, then to the rushing waters below them. You sure you can manage? Robert studies a tree, tries different hand and foot placements, and stumbles off to the side after slipping. He keeps hopping and sliding, then falling, then digging into the tree bark with his nails, tearing them in the process. He finally gets a proper grip and begins to climb, clutching tightly and squeezing desperately. Donald watches the young man struggle and feels uneasy. I'll not be happy if he comes to any harm. Jason shoves him, but he hardly moves a step. You'll be fine. Donald watches as Robert gasps and sucks in air for a moment. I don't think it matters to you what happens to him at all. Jason nods convincingly in disapproval. Look, I love you, I love Tilda, and I wouldn't have suggested it if I didn't think he could do it. He's doing good, look at him go. Robert's swollen face is painful as his arms stiffen with blood and they begin to tire. He gets up to a branch, swings a leg over, and hugs the tree. His arms thank him, his heavy legs shake under him as they swing wildly, then push onto the tree for leverage. He's resting. It's a big tree and a lot to ask anyone to climb. But he's nearly there. Donald looks at Jason, who is sneering with contempt. Then he feels his body get heavy, his breath stiffen and blood rushing. I don't think he needs to go much higher. Bobby, give it a little more, then take a good look around. Robert looks down at the two, then secures his head against the tree. Okay. Donald starts moving towards the base of the tree, and Jason watches Robert, amused at the sight. Robert steps onto a branch and stands straight up and looks around. I can see right over the tree line. Donald smiles slightly in relief. That's good. Can you turn around and look toward the river? Robert turns his head with a stiff neck, sweating profusely, and looks over his shoulder. I need to go a little higher. Donald grits his teeth, then leans up against the tree, watching Jason smile toothfully. What are you so happy about? Jason keeps his eyes locked on Robert. Getting out of here, that's what. Donald crosses his arms, thinking we maybe shouldn't have listened to you. Jason shrugs, looks at Donald for a moment. You didn't have to. Besides, you're the one with the... Annoyed, Donald looks up and sees a branch falling between the trees. Are you all right up there? Robert's face clenches up for a moment. Then he stops and takes a look over his shoulder. Yeah, just let me look real quick. He sucks in a breath, squeezes the tree, and looks over his shoulder, but realizes that if he wants a clear line of sight, he needs to shimmy over to one side of the tree. Don't be too hasty. Robert feels his way around, then grabs a branch and loosens his grip slightly as he looks. There's nothing north. Upstream is no good. Just let me... The branch snaps. A sequence of snapping, tearing, and loud, meaty thuds rip through the trees. Donald looks up in terror, trying to find the source of the sounds. No. A final thud is heard as an orange blur hits the edge of the overhang, overlooking the massive watery foam below. Donald runs to the edge looking for Robert, desperately looking for a way down. Jason looks right over, carefully making sure not to get too close to the edge. Donald looks up at Jason, who looks distraught and pale. You sorry son of a bitch! He grabs Jason and smacks him up against a tree. Don, please be reasonable. His fingertips are cold, nose is cold, cheeks are cold, his body is hot and sweaty. Burning, hot sensation on his skin. Donald hatefully stares into his soul. He lets Jason slump into a pile on the ground, pinning his forearm to the ground with his knee. He produces a knife and slithers it up to his face, placing the cold steel broadside onto his cheek. Jason, I will allow you an opportunity to make this right. Donald swings the sling of the rifle past his shoulder. He feels around under his nearly depleted bandolier. It's getting dark now. He pulls out a single .308 round. You can make this right before then. Pulls back the bolt and slides the round into the slot. Please don't, Don. Donald slides the bolt back forward and points the rifle at Jason. You're gonna climb that tree. I am the one with the rifle.